Ooh, what's going on, YouTube? Welcome back. It's Friday night. You know what that means. It's Hockey Stick Talk Nation. With me, your host, Dan, and my guest tonight from the Starcastic Remarks, Ryan Chambers. What's going on, Ryan? Thanks for being here tonight.
Hey guys, it's going good, and I appreciate you having me on. We did not plan for this, by the way, by anybody who's wondering. We talked about this weeks ago. It just so happens that I'm coming on for this evening. Perfect timing, right?
Perfect timing is correct. Let's give a shout out to everyone who's popping in here tonight with us. We have Matthew Pitsley. What's going on, Matthew? We have Canadian Card Breakers, CCB. What's going on, CCB? Thanks for being here. We have Robert Pop Springs. We have Callie and Jordan Squad. Scroll down here. Everyone's talking to each other. We have Dewey Thacker in the house. We have Zach's Collections. We have a sports card ripping teacher. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. As you all know, it is trade deadline day today. There's been a lot going on in the NHL. We're going to discuss some of them tonight, so we're going to dive right in earlier to the show. So cut out a couple slides because there's going to be a lot of talking going on tonight to get some people's thoughts on the trades and what's going on. And Dallas had a huge trade deadline too, so we'll talk a little bit about that with Ryan as well. Shout out to Aaron. Thanks for coming in. As always, let's start off with giving a shout out to our channel sponsor here today and every day, and that is Tsunami Sportscards. If you're looking for singles or PC players to add to your collections, go check out Tsunami Sportscards. Use the code DMHockey88 where you can save 25% off on your first purchase. I don't know if my slide's popping up there, but
I can see it. I don't know if...
Okay. I can't see it on my end, so. But that's all right. We'll just close off and bring it back up. Bear with us. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end. There we go. So let's start off with some of the big trades that have happened throughout the week and today, really. A big trade that happened just recently. Seth Jones traded to the Panthers for Spencer Knight going to the Blackhawks. Looks like the Panthers are trying to replace Brandon Montour there with the Seth Jones pickup.
I think it's a good pickup for the Panthers. Now, it is a steep price to pay, in my opinion. But you need people to play on the right side, on the defensive side. So, excuse me, going lefty-righty is something that the Stars like to do a lot, and they really kind of dug into it this year. And it kind of looks like the Panthers are doing that with this trade here. So he's going to be a really good fit. And, Chicago gets back a number one goalie prospect who could be their goalie of the future for a decade plus. So it gives Spencer Knight a chance to really kind of shine for the Chicago Blackhawks.
And did he ever shine in his first game there, stopping 41 out of 42 shots for the win?
Definitely wanted to show at least early on that, yeah, they're trying to make Florida regret that trade already, even though it's just one game.
Definitely. And then we go to our next thing. The Avalanche just keep boosting up that roster. They added Ryan Lindgren and Jimmy Vesey from the Rangers, and the Rangers get back UC Parsonen and Calvin DeHaan and a couple picks.
So with Ryan Lindgren, I thought that was a pretty good pickup for the Avalanche. The Avalanche have had a little bit of depth problems with their blue line this year. And that's with as good a blue line as they've had. And Ryan Lindgren will not be asked to play the same role in Colorado like he was with the Rangers. With the Rangers, he was playing the top four pairing. And in a pinch, I think he might do it with the Avalanche if there's an injury or something. But he will be slotted into that third pairing role with the Avalanche. And I think that's a good role for him, and that's a good role for the Colorado Avalanche as well. So it's good for the Avalanche to pick that up. UC Parsonen, I believe he's on his third team this year already.
Yeah, 13.
He's just highly thought of guy, and I think he's going to be a decent pickup for the for them. So, and then Calvin DeHaan is just a veteran kind of depth defenseman. He'll be good for them as well. So, overall, I think both teams kind of got a lot out of this trade. It was definitely much more of a hockey trade than we saw in some other trades here today.
Yeah, definitely. Then we have Wyatt Johnston and the Stars working on extension, but now we know that extension, and this is where you come in, Ryan. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that extension for Wyatt Johnston?
So Wyatt Johnston, he signs an 8-year deal. He gets a $8.4 million cap hit per season. I don't believe we know the exact ramifications of the deal yet, like how much he makes, the exact amount each year that he makes or whatever. But for me, that's an absolute steal. For someone who watches him every single game, and I don't think a lot of people understand how big and how important he is to the Dallas Stars. This is a guy who he's got that superstar gene. We'll talk about another superstar here in a second, but before the Stars made the trade that they did today, me and my two brothers on our podcast were always talking about, well, the Stars are a really good team and they have a whole bunch of depth, but they don't have that one player, that Nathan McKinnon, that Connor Bedard, the Connor McDavid type, elite level player. And like they have players who go off for, a couple of weeks at a time and they play like an elite player, but they don't have someone who consistently does it throughout the season. And Wyatt Johnston, for me, is that player, and he's going to be that player. And he's only 22. He led the Stars in goal scoring last year, and he was part of the reason why they went all the way to the Western Conference Final. He's done everything right. He's done nothing but progress. He has not regressed once. This is a guy that leads the Stars in time on ice by over a minute. Over the last 2 seasons. He plays in every single situation. It's not just power play or just 5-on-5. I'm not joking. Every single situation he plays. Shorthanded, 3-on-3, 5-on-3. He's normally the center out there on the penalty kill. It's just ridiculous what this guy does. And the $8.4 million cap hit, that's an absolute steal. I was telling you before we started live, I expected him to get $10 million. I truly did. I believed it. I was just like, I think this guy is going to be the Dallas Stars' first $10 million cap hit player in the cap era. And obviously that wasn't the case, but it's an absolute steal. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I wish I could tell more people about how good of a player he truly is. 8.4 is a legit steal, in my opinion.
And not a lot of people know this, but there's no draft video on him. They just drafted him because this was during the COVID year, so he didn't play. And Dallas went on a limb to draft him too.
Well, and that's the funny thing is I would argue that he's probably not argue. He is the best player to come out of that draft. And that's above Matty Beniers, who has kind of been a little bit invisible this year and last a little bit. And the even crazier thing is he was drafted 23rd overall in the first round, and the Stars actually traded down to get him. Like they had a higher pick and they traded it away because they knew he was still going to be available, and they got extra draft capital out of that. So not only do you get the player that you want, you got more draft capital out of it. And it's just credit to the Stars scouting staff and just what they've done. And I mean, that's the reason why, they're able to make the deal that they did today. So
definitely. And then we had the Cap sign Lindgren to a 3-year extension. That's Ryan Lindgren's brother, Charlie Lindgren.
Charlie's been really good too for the Caps. Like between him and Logan Thompson, they have been absolutely ridiculous. I don't think they're gonna be able to replicate what they did this year. But that's a two-headed monster in Washington right now, and the thing is you could throw either one of those guys in for game 1 of the playoffs for the Capitals, and they'll play the exact same way because they're confident in both of those guys. So he's kind of taken more of a 1B role rather than the starter. He was more of the starter last year. He's kind of taken a little bit of a backseat over Logan Thompson, but he's still been ridiculous. I forget the exact cap hit. I think it was 4.5 or 3.5 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was something ridiculous. So Washington's been great, and he's been a big part of it.
Definitely, both those goalies have been a great part of that. Our next thing here is Tampa Bay acquires Oliver Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gourde, who comes back to Tampa Bay from the Kraken for Mikey Eastmont, and the Kraken get a first-round pick of 2026, first-round pick of 2027, and a 2025 second-round pick. So the Lightning looking to boost up again for another run.
And they look scary doing it too. They're just like, let's get the band back together. So first it was Ryan McDonough. Now they've got Yanni Gourde back. And then you add a guy in Oliver Bjorkstrand who, honestly, he's been low-key one of the undervalued players in the NHL the past couple of seasons. He's been a great goal scorer wherever he's been, whether it's been in Seattle or in Columbus before that. So this is a fantastic ad for Tampa, who needed a little bit more depth on that side. And it also goes to show you that they're not afraid to trade their draft picks. I mean, they did that whole thing with Tanner Jeannot last year or the year before.
Yeah.
I think it was like 5 draft picks for the one guy. I was like, oh my goodness gracious, that's ridiculous. And then they do it again just because. And the argument is, well, why get rid of all of your futures? Well, they've got a core that they know can win. They've already won 2 cups with a majority of these guys, with Vasi, with Kucherov, Point. Hedman is not getting any younger. He's 34, so he's getting up there a little bit. So this is like, I don't want to say this is like a last ditch chance to go and win one more cup before it's too late, but it definitely feels like they're kind of going all in right now with that trade.
Yeah, definitely. Then that's just going to boost Lightning up. It's going to be. I'm curious to see how it's going to affect in the long run, because you got, like you said, Vasilevsky's getting up there. They have no really goalie depth after that, and then, like you say, you got Hedman, whose age is coming, and a couple of the other ones who are coming up to that age as well. So it's going to be I'm curious to see how it's going to be in the long run here in the next couple of years for them.
And then the players that they've added fairly recently, like I know Hagel's not like fairly recently, but he's more recent than some of the other guys. He's been a great addition from Chicago, and then obviously the Jake Gensel. I think Tampa Bay Lightning fans are very happy that they did not re-sign Steven Stamkos at this point. I'm sure there was some unhappiness there when they originally did it, but you look at this trade, this says we're going for the cup once again, guys. So Tampa Bay's got to love it.
Yeah. Then next we got the Oilers acquired Trent Frederick, Max Jones, and Peter Hauser from Boston for Max Warner, 2025 second-round pick, 2026 fourth-round pick, and New Jersey Devils were also in there, and they got a player too.
And this is a good trade for all around. Obviously, I give the Oilers the upper hand here a little bit because they get Trent Frederick, but this is just another guy that just adds to the depth of that team, and they showed last year, especially against the Stars, that they have more depth than I thought, and I thought we had him for sure in that Western Conference Final last year, and that wasn't the case. And they've got a lot of the same players in Edmonton, and they're adding Trent Frederick on top of that. So a big, giant, physical guy. He can play on the wing or center. He's just an excellent addition for that Edmonton Oilers team that could use a little bit more depth, even though they've got some.
And then they also added Jake Wallman, too, from San Jose, which I thought was a steep price for Wallman. They gave up a first-round pick for Wallman.
Now, the the thing about Jake Wallman is I don't know how much you've gotten to watch him, Dan, but he is very low key. Could be one of the top defensemen in the NHL. He's that good, and I was shocked that Detroit even got rid of him in the first place when they traded him to San Jose. And then I'm even more shocked that San Jose didn't keep him. Maybe they just didn't see him in their long-term plans. But he's on the offensive side of the puck. He's fantastic, and I've heard nothing but good things about this guy. And I've gotten to watch 2 San Jose games that were non-Dallas Stars related games, and he played really well in both of those games. It was just he's just on a terrible team. So. But that's a really good ad, if you ask me. Just fantastic ad to get Jake Wellman.
And then we got a trade that shocked, I think, the whole NHL here, and that was Brad Marchand got traded to the Florida Panthers for a second-round pick. Not even like a prospect going back or anything, which is kind of odd to see a little bit.
You have to imagine that Brad Marchand at least had a little bit of a hand in this. And I think Don Sweeney probably asked where he wanted to go. If I'm being totally honest, I mean, he's been there for forever and he deserves at least a little bit of loyalty from the Bruins front office in order to be able to do that. So I think that's a little bit of why the return for Marchand is a little underwhelming. But at the same time, Boston is nowhere close to the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs this year for the first time in a while, and they need draft capital. It's time to. I don't necessarily think a rebuild is necessary in Boston. I mean, possibly, but at the very least, they need a retool there. And Marchand can very easily just re-sign back with the Boston Bruins after the season if he wants to. So we'll have to wait and see how he fits into that Panthers team. But the Panthers continue to be another scary team that I do not want to see in the playoffs. And I'm so glad, at least for now, that Dallas is in the West and not in the East with the Florida Panthers. So we'll see how they do.
Then Boston wasn't done. They traded Charlie Coyle to the Avalanche, which is another huge pickup for the Avalanche for Casey Milstead and Will Zellers and a second-round pick.
On this one, I was honestly extremely surprised on this one. From the Colorado perspective, and maybe I just don't watch enough Colorado Avalanche hockey, so I can't really talk on I don't want to say on an expert level, but on a knowledgeable level. But from what I understand, Charlie Coyle is not really a second line center, which is what they kind of need there in Colorado. And maybe there was just no one else available, and they just really didn't want Casey Middlestad to be that second center role guy. So I don't know. I don't know what was going on there, and maybe they were just looking for some veteran pieces and stuff like that. But that's just it was a bewildering trade for me. So we'll have to wait and see what that does for the Colorado Avalanche.
Then I know if I don't talk about the Leafs, we'll get angry shout-outs here. So, but the Leafs picked up Scott Lofton. I think that's a huge pickup for the Leafs, but it's still not going to get them out of the first round.
I know that you said you had a lot of Leaf fans here in the chat and stuff like that, and I'm rooting for him. Like, honestly, like, I probably shouldn't as a Stars fan, because we're just like completely polar opposites of everything, in terms of weather and sports and everything and geography. But like, I honestly feel so bad for them. They've got, I don't understand that's the other thing about the Leafs that I don't understand. They've got all of these elite players, and they just can't seem to get over the hump. And they've gotten over the hump once, and that one time they did, they got absolutely obliterated in the next round. So I don't know what the deal is with the Leafs. I think this is a good pickup. I don't think this is like an earth-shattering mover like some other trades, but This is a guy that could play in your middle six and maybe play on the top line, because I know they've been trying to find someone to play with Matthews up there on the right side, I believe. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe it is an earth-shattering move, and Scott Lawton becomes the reincarnation of Wayne Gretzky or something. I'm not sure.
And then they also got Brandon Carlo from Boston too as well. So another steady defenseman. That's
a big one there. That's the one that I think is probably not necessarily the sexy pick. Like obviously the other one is getting Scott Lawton is more the guy that was more talked about. But Brandon Carlo is a fantastic defensive defenseman. I mean, you want someone who you can consistently put out there and believe that you're not going to get scored on. He's one of those guys that you can throw out there at those moments in time. So maybe that will help ease the Leafs' fears of giving up more goals and stuff like that. But that is more of a bigger get for the Leafs than Scott Lawton, in my opinion. So
then we'll move on to the Senators, the other Canadian team. They picked up Dylan Cousins from Buffalo for Josh Norris and Jacob Bernard-Docker, which I was surprised of that trade because I didn't see that one coming.
Dylan Cousins has had a really good season, and who knows what Buffalo's doing at this point. I don't think I don't think they know what they're doing at this point. But it does make a little bit of sense once you look at it. I do think that Josh Norris is probably a higher skilled player than Dylan Cousins. But the thing is Dylan Cousins is more consistent, and mostly when it comes to injury history. Like he's that's the thing that kills Josh Norris. He could be a 30 goal scorer every single year, and they just haven't been able to rely upon that. Ottawa hasn't, because he's been hurt so many times, and that's not necessarily his fault. It's just a fact. And they finally were like, we have an opportunity to go out and get this guy and continue our push to keep our playoff spot and be in the playoffs for the first time in a while. This is a guy that we can more rely upon to be healthy and give equal or better offense than Josh Norris. So I really, really like this deal for Ottawa. And then for Jacob Bernard-Docker, that's a guy that hasn't exactly panned out the way that a lot of people thought. He's still a decent defenseman as a guy that can play in your bottom role, and he is right-handed. So I mean, right-handers are gold in the NHL. Yeah. But that's something that you're willing to give up in order to get Dylan Cousins, who the demand was definitely higher there, just because it is the trade deadline. So you have to pay a little bit more just to get what you need and get what you want to continue that push for the playoffs for Ottawa. So good for them, seriously.
And then the Jets had a couple pickups. They picked up Luke Shen and Brandon Tanev.
Those are low-key, very under-the-radar pickups for Winnipeg, because there's not much wrong with going on in Winnipeg right now. They're scoring goals. They've got the best goalie in the world. Their defense is just fantastic the way that they're playing right now. And then they go out and they get these two guys just to add to their middle six / bottom six. Yeah, it's just some depth pickups, and it just makes them even more dangerous going into the playoffs. So yeah. The big question obviously will be, well, yeah, Winnipeg's had a really good regular season, but we've seen what has happened in the playoffs the last couple of years, where they've, not to bring the Leafs into it, but they've been an early round exit, very similar to the Leafs. So this is a way that maybe they can rely upon these guys to help them get through that first round and maybe make a deeper push, but we'll have to wait and see what that does for them.
Just give a quick shout out to a couple people that popped in. We have Paul in the 619 and Dig It for coming in. Thanks, guys, for coming in. So now we'll get on to the big trade of the day, and that is Mikko Rantanen does a sign and trade with the Dallas Stars, and the Stars gave up a lot for this. They gave up Logan Stankoven and a few solid picks. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this trade and what Carolina's getting in Stankoven and what you guys are getting in Rantanen?
Wait, Rainen got traded to Dallas? No, I'm just kidding. I have
Breaking
been
news.
I have been absolutely all over this for the last 24 hours. We did an episode last night after a Stars game, and I was just doing my normal post-production podcast stuff. And then all of a sudden, I just look at X and it's exploding. And I'm like, what on earth is going on here? So, of course, I go in there and Elliot Friedman drops a bomb. And then he drops another bomb in the same thread. And then we don't hear from him for like 6 or 7 hours. And I'm like, dude, you can't do that to like the Stars fans, especially. And it was the whole day. I'm just refresh, but like, scrolling up on my phone, making sure I'm staying up to date with everything. Obviously, this makes Dallas the perennial cup contending favorite for a lot of people. I'm still a little weary on our defensive issues if Miro Heiskanen is not able to come back. But with Rantanen coming in and, probably more than likely playing on the top line with Rope Hintz and Jason Robertson, who are just off on a tear right now, they're going to score a lot of goals. And that just makes this ridiculous top 12. Like they've got Sam Steele on the fourth line. Our other rookie, Maverick Bork, who possibly could have been in this deal, is on the fourth line. And then Dodonov, who he's been up and down the lineup. He's played on every single line, and it looks like he's going to be slated into the fourth line when the Stars play tomorrow night with Rantanen in the lineup for the first time. So it's just absolutely, utterly ridiculous. I did not see this coming at all. I'd seen the rumors and stuff like that, but I just thought it was just our GM Jim Nill just being like, "Hey, buddy, how's it going? Hey, what do you want for him? Okay, cool. I don't think that's gonna work for us, but thanks for answering my call and kind of whatever." So I don't know. I did not expect this to happen. But for the Hurricanes, this was the hard part for me was giving up Logan Stankoven. And as soon as I knew it was a foregone conclusion that Mikko Rantanen was coming to Dallas, I knew that he was part of the deal. It made too much sense. He is a guy that will fit absolutely perfect in a Carolina system. He's got a ridiculous motor to him. That's the thing that he prides himself most on. I got a chance to talk to him a couple of years ago before he went pro. And that's something that he said about his game that he absolutely loves is he just keeps going. He keeps going. And he kind of has to because as a smaller guy, he's only 5'7". He kind of has to do that in order to be able to compete against the best players in the world that are, sometimes a full foot taller than him. We've got Liam Bischel on our blue line. He's our top defensive prospect in the Stars organization. He's 6'7". And seeing the two guys on this ice together at the same time, just the ridiculousness and height was ridiculous. And it just goes to show like how good he is. And one of the tweets I put up on my podcast feed that I talked about was just the emotions that went through the day. And all the excitement and build. And, we finally got it. The trade's for real. And then I see the Carolina Hurricane social media post that Stanky is now in Riley. And that was a little heartbreaking, to be completely honest. And as excited as I am to have Mikko Rantanen there, I got teary-eyed the first time I saw that social media post. You get so connected to these players. And it was hard. So just Carolina fans, if you're listening, just know that you are getting one of the greatest people in the world. He is a fantastic hockey player and he will be for a long time, but character-wise and just person-wise, he is one of the greatest people you will ever meet. He's incredible.
Definitely. He's going to be a really great player.
For a long time, for a very long time. And again, Rod Brindamore is going to love him. The head coach in Carolina he's going to absolutely love this guy. And this is a guy that you can plug and play in immediately. And he's got a lot to prove now, especially because he wants to prove Dallas wrong now that, that he can be an everyday player or whatever. So
Yeah.
we'll have to wait and see. I'm secretly a closet Canes fan now. I'll be completely honest. They are my secondary team. If the Stars can't win the Stanley Cup, it better be the Carolina Hurricanes. Sorry, Maple Leafs fans. I love y'all too, but it's Logan Stankoven. I hope you understand.
Shout out to Barry popping in and Christopher Works. Thanks, guys, for coming. So now that being said, I think we have our Cup final pretty much set in Florida and Dallas by the looks of the trades, deadline day, and everything like that. It looks like it could come down to those two teams.
It could, but that's why you play the games, right? You never know. And I mean, like Florida, not last year, but 2 years ago, they were down 3-1 in their series to Boston. Boston had the greatest regular season in NHL history, and Florida turns it around, wins that series in 7, and goes all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And no one saw that coming. Like, I can't imagine being one of those players in that room, in the Florida room in Game 5 like that, and just being like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go all the way to the Stanley Cup Final." You just never know. And I mean, I would say those are the two favorites right now, just because recency bias with the Panthers, and then Dallas making the big splash today that they did. But yeah, we could see a collision course of these two teams in the Stanley Cup Final. And as a Stars fan, and when we saw these two teams play in Finland in November, oh boy, if that's the case, the Stars are in for a world of hurts. They're gonna have to play better than they did in November against the Florida Panthers.
Definitely. So we'll move on to our next slide here, and this is our good community shout out here. So first shout out is obviously to our guest tonight, Starcast Remarks. Go check them out. I have their YouTube channel in the description, also pinned to the chat. So go check them out, give them a sub, and give them a thumbs up on a video. Then we also have Goza, a good friend of mine who's a huge Rangers fan. Go check his channel out. We have HockeyTube19, another great channel for you guys to go check out. It's Us, another great channel. And Matty Ice Cards. Go check these guys out and give them a subs up. And now on to our portion of the show where it's all about our guests. And here's where you can check out our guests. If you want to check him out on YouTube, his YouTube channel's there. His Instagram is there as well. And his Facebook channel. So go check him out. And without further ado, we're going to turn it over and put our spotlight on the guests. And we got some questions here for you. But first off, why don't you tell us how you get started, Ryan, and why the Stars?
To be completely honest with you, when I was born in 1993, which just happened to coincide with when the Stars moved from Minnesota to Texas. So there's a little bit of, a personal connection there. Just I've been alive as long as they've been here in Dallas. And my dad took me to my first game when I was 4, and I instantly fell in love with it. And I played hockey till I was probably about 13, 14. And it's just been a part of me ever since I can remember. And from there, I mean, I'm not joking. I watched every single game for years. And I still remember 1999 when Brett Hull scored the cup-winning goal. And yes, Sabres fans, it was a goal. It will continue to be a goal. I know I gotta pick at Buffalo Sabres fans a little bit, kick them while they're down. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't have done that because of y'all's state of your franchise right now. But anyways, I still remember being 6 years old watching that goal go in, and I remember it because it was like almost 2 o'clock in the morning, between 1 or 2 in the morning. And as a 6-year-old, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. It's like, I'm up so late. And so that's what really kind of sparked it, was the Stanley Cup win in 1999. And now I started the podcast in 2020 during COVID. And I'm a band director. I'm a band teacher down here in Texas. And we were all quarantined. Like we weren't at school for the longest time, and I wanted something else to do. I was so bored out of my mind. I was just like, okay, I'm kind of a nutso about hockey and about the Stars. Let's start a podcast like from the fan side. And I kind of roped my brother Chris into it, and we did it for about a year and a half, and then I roped my brother James into it, and then he's done it ever since. We've been going for about 5 years now, and I mean I've got media credentials now. I get to talk to the players on a fairly regular basis. It seems like every week. It's just it's so much fun to do this. It's a pleasure. It's a blessing. And I know a lot of people would look at this and be like, oh, that's a whole lot of work. What Ryan and Dan are doing. And I'm like, it's a ton of fun to do. It's a hobby for me. It's not even work. Like, I enjoy doing what I do here and being a band teacher, but this is like the side gig that kind of keeps me going and gets me up in the mornings, knowing that I get to go to the rink after I'm done at work for the day or whatever. So that's just how it got all started, and we do the same thing ever since. We do a podcast after every single Stars game. We do once a week Wednesday episode, and we've just been doing it for a while now. At the same time, it feels like we haven't been doing it that long, but it's been 5 years now, and that just blows my mind that we're at that point. And I think we've done over 500 episodes. I think we fairly recently got over 500 episodes. So, I mean, a lot of podcasts don't even get over 50. So the fact that we were there, just goodness gracious, I'm so blessed, and I'm so happy to do what I get to do here.
That's awesome to hear. And I'm glad that you enjoy it. It's like me. I enjoy talking hockey. Like I said, I live and breathe it to you backstage. I coach, I play, stepkids play. Like, it's 24/7 hockey here. There's never a stop. But yeah, so a couple of questions that we ask a lot of the people who come on the show. One I got for you is, what is your Mount Rushmore of new or old star players?
Oh gosh. Oh, that is such a loaded question. Do I have to put Mikko Rantanen on now? No, I'm just kidding. Man, I don't even know where to start.
If you want, we could split it up so you could do one of older and one of newer.
Oh, that's no fun though. That makes it too easy. Okay, fine. We'll do this. Okay, so if I'm specifically looking at four players, obviously Mike Modano has to be in there. He's the one that made hockey in Texas a thing. Like, he is truly the single reason why the Stars have been able to succeed in a market. That's a good one. Sensei, that's a very good top four, and mine is fairly close to that. So I'll put Morrow in, I'll put Modano as one. I will probably put in there Jamie Benn, just for the duration of how long he's been a Dallas Star. It's been so he's got to be on that Mount Rushmore. Oh man, goodness, I guess yeah, I have to put Jari Lehtinen in there too. Jari Lehtinen has to be in there, just for the fact of that he won 3 Selkies, and he was just Madonna's line mate for the longest time, and he's I mean, he is the reason why there are so many Finnish players on the Dallas Stars, including brand new Mikko Rantanen. I mean, he kind of like throws Jim Nill a bone every once in a while. I was like, hey, you see this guy? Go and get him. It was like, no one's talking about him. He'll be a good like AHL player or depth fill in or whatever. And like, we have a player named R2 Huru, and that's a perfect example. He's a great fill in player. He's a guy that can come in and be on the bottom four. Anyways, and then number 4, it's got to be Zuby, Sergei Zubov. He's just up there in terms of points. He has a rule where if you have a 5-on-3 power play for over 45 seconds, you absolutely have to score, period. So those are my 4. So I don't even remember what I said. Modano, Ben, Lehtinen, Zuby. Those 4.
Nice.
That would be on my Mount Rushmore.
Great one. Now the next question we got for you is favorite star player, new or old?
Favorite star player, new or old? I'm going to show my age a little bit with this one. Shane Churla, for the old one. He was a huge draw for Stars fans early in the day because I'll be honest, early on in the mid 90s to late 90s, Texas people didn't really understand what was going on the ice. So the thing they did understand was when Shane Churla would beat the crud out of somebody. So he was always a big draw for Stars fans, and he's probably before Madonna really started getting going. He was the guy that kept people coming back to Stars games early on in 93, 94, and 94, 95. So old wise, he was on my list. I also got to put Joe Nieuwendyk on there too. He was just, again, a lot of people might not know this, but the player that the Stars traded for Joe Nieuwendyk was Jerome McGinley. So they thought very highly of this guy, and it's just, he's got to be on there, and he's the reason why the Stars were as good as they were in the playoffs in 1999. So. And then I guess new wise, I've got to go with Wyatt Johnston. But I already kind of gushed about him earlier in your episode here, Dan. But he just does everything right. Everything right. He's the perfect two-way player. He scores goals. He's clutch in the right moments. His character is impeccable. And it's to the point where a lot of people in this area, in this fan base, are starting to wonder if he's going to be the next captain of this franchise once Jamie Benn has hung up the skates. And I'm right on that bandwagon with everybody else right now. So that's just my personal opinion.
Awesome. Those are great ones. So now after the trade deadline, thoughts on the team this year now?
They got a lot to prove. They were a Stanley Cup contender before the season started, and a lot of people were kind of picking them the last couple of seasons to win the Stanley Cup. With what they did today, it's a cup or bust season, in my opinion. And I know we haven't even made the Stanley Cup final since the bubble playoffs, back up when the Stars were playing in Edmonton for that. But I don't see how it doesn't make sense. You have to the very least to make the Stanley Cup final. If you don't make the Stanley Cup final, it's a lost season, especially considering what you've done, what you gave up. You got Granlund, went out and got a depth defenseman in CC. You signed arguably one of the best players in the NHL in the past half decade in Mikko Rantanen, who regularly has scored 100 points. And yeah, maybe it was with Nathan McKinnon, but still shows he can be elite and play with elite players. So that's me. It's cup or bust for me and where I believe this team needs to be in order to be considered a success this year.
Awesome. Another question I asked all the guests is your favorite NHL moment from the Stars or just NHL in general?
There's a couple. Obviously, I already mentioned the Hall goal in 1999. That's right now the Stars. That's like the biggest moment, obviously, in Stars history in 1999. But there's a couple of others. It was in 2008 in the Western Conference Final. It was actually in the second round to go to the Western Conference Final, and I believe it was the fifth overtime. And Brendan Morrow puts away a power play goal, and it was like 2 a.m. And just that ridiculousness of that goal and how it stands up in people's memories even today is just ridiculous. Some more recent ones was a couple years ago. Joe Pavelski, he obviously took that concussion earlier in the playoffs, and he comes back against Seattle in the second round. And what does he do? He scores 4 goals, and they lose the game. That's the crazy thing. In game 1 against Seattle, he scores 4 goals, and they lose the game. And that was a memorable moment that kind of has stood out. And then I guess the most recent one that stands out more than any of them is Yoel Kiviranta in the playoffs against the Colorado Avalanche. Just the most unlikely of players. It's just like, Disney story type script for this. He scores a hat trick, and the third goal comes in overtime against them to basically put them away. And they continue on in the playoffs on their way to the Stanley Cup final. And that was one of the big ones for me. The late ones, I would say one of the latest.
Awesome. Who in the Dallas Stars prospects pool is a kid that we should be looking out for here in the next couple of years?
See, that's the thing is that with the way the Stars are right now, it's kind of hard to say that there is one. And all the ones that I would say are already graduated. I mean, Bischel. There, a lot of people know about Maverick Bork. I feel like more people are starting to pay attention to that because he's starting to get going. He had a very poor start to the season, but that's no surprise. He's a rookie, trying to get used to the speed of the NHL, which is way faster than the AHL. And but I guess you could say Bischel. Liam Bischel, he hasn't really played all that much up here with the big club this year. He played about 20, 25 games. He's 6'7". He's huge. He's monstrous. He adds an aspect to the Stars that they don't really have, which is a physical aspect. He just hits everything in sight. He's like a defensive Cal Clutterbuck. For those of you that understand that reference, he just hits everything in sight, and he's not afraid to use his body to put somebody on their butt. So that's someone that I would be looking out for. If you're looking for someone way down on the depth chart, probably the next one that you're probably looking at is Emil Hemming. He's plays with the Barrie Colts up in Canadian Major Juniors, and he's probably the next high prospect for the Dallas Stars. There's some good players down in the Texas Stars, their AHL, but they're not to the same level as the Stankovens, the Borks, the Bischels that have all graduated now. So
the next question I got for you is coming up to the draft deadline. What areas are the Dallas Stars looking to draft in? Like, it's going to be defensive side, offensive?
I don't really know, to be honest with you, because that's not really how Jim Nill does his thing. I mean, if there's an obvious player that fits a need and it's the best player available, then obviously he's the great, perfect. I think they probably need to go on the forward side a little bit because the last couple of years they've kind of drafted quite a few defensemen. But that's not really how Jim Nill does his drafting. It doesn't matter who it is. Even if it's someone that they don't really need and it doesn't really fill out their prospect pool, he still takes them because it's the best player available according to his guys, and he trusts his guys. So that's just how he does things. And yeah, that's basically all it.
Any other hobbies that you have besides hockey?
Well, obviously, I am a band director, so I play all sorts of instruments. I think I'm up to 12 or 13 different instruments, including clarinet, flute, saxophone, French horn, baritone. Baritone, for those of you that don't know, is kind of like a mini tuba. Piano. I do a little bit of pianos, and I do some guitar stuff, although I don't really count that one. I'm not a great guitar player, but that's kind of what I do in my spare time. Is it's definitely music related stuff. It's a big part of who I am. It's music and hockey. Those are the two biggest things outside of my family in my life. So
awesome. Now we're going to open up the floor to the chat. If the chat has any questions for Ryan, please type it up, and I'll pull up screen so you can ask them. But no. Is there any trade that happened today that kind of went under the radar, do you feel like?
Like I said earlier, the Winnipeg trades kind of flew under the radar for me a little bit, just because that's a team that's just building up their depth, and they're getting ready for the playoffs, and it's going to be a good push for them. They pretty much have to make sure that they just keep playing the same way. They've taken a little bit of a dip lately in the standings, but they're starting to get there, and I think adding those two players will help.
CCB says, how much are tickets in Dallas?
Oh my goodness. I think Canadian fans are not going to be very, and not like Montreal Canadian fans, but like across Canada, I think fans are not going to like this. But they're fairly cheap. Like you have to understand, down here in the South, obviously hockey is not the draw that it is up in the North. Even in the northeastern part of the United States or in Minnesota, like in here, there's 4 major franchises here in the DFW area, Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it's in this order. It's the Cowboys are king, and it's not even close. Then you've got kind of a tie between the Mavs and the Rangers, although I would probably put the Rangers above the Mavericks right now, considering what the Mavericks just did recently. I won't go off on that side tangent. And then the Stars kind of play fourth fiddle in terms of, major sports franchises. So it's just the tickets are fairly cheap. You can get like 300 level terrace seating, probably, and it depends on the game, but probably about $30 to $40 per seat. That's pretty. I'm telling you, it's a pretty good deal. And now, obviously, it depends on the opponent. So, like, if San Jose's coming into town, it's going to be probably 25 or something like that. And if it's like a big draw, like the Rangers or Chicago or something like that, it'll be like 60, 70. But it's pretty good pricing, and maybe that's another reason why I got into hockey so much. It's not bad at all. It's very cheap entertainment.
Yeah, no. Here to go to a Leafs game is probably going to cost you like close to $1,500, depending on where you sit.
That's ridiculous. And I know people make jokes about when they go to Leafs games that they have to like take out a second mortgage on their house in order to be able to go to one game or whatever. So I've heard all sorts of things about the city of Toronto and how much they love their Maple Leafs. And so that is one thing about Dallas, though, too, is that they are a big market. Yes, you could say they're one of the biggest metropolitan areas in North America. But they have a very, very, very loyal and dedicated and hardcore group of fans, like a niche group of fans that just absolutely love this team. We
got a lot of questions pertaining to how much stuff costs. How much is beer at Dallas game?
It depends. I think see, with me being in the press box now, it's been a long time since I've actually done anything like that. I think the last time I checked, it was like $15 to $20 for just a regular beer. Any regular size you can ask. But it's again pretty decent pricing considering everything. So,
Callie and Jordan Squad says Mike Badano or Troy Aikman.
I'm a little biased, so it's not even close. It's Mike Modano. Like, it has to be Mike Modano. But you also can't overlook Troy Aikman and what he did for the Dallas Cowboys for getting all those Super Bowl rings for them back in the 90s. So,
Christopher Works has a question here. Says, you said you're a teacher. Do the kids know that you do a podcast, and do they ask you if they can get in them?
Yes, they do. They know that I have a podcast. I don't like advertise it or anything like that to the kids, but if they say you have a podcast, like they directly ask me, I don't like deny it or anything like that. They just think it's the coolest thing. Like I gotten to meet all sorts of cool people. And actually I even have these are my jerseys over here. This is actually in the office here at my in the band hall, and I got a couple jerseys there, just a couple of just souvenir things, and they'll constantly ask me, wait, did you talk to Luca? And yes, I would be like, yes, I talked to Luca recently, or well, not recently anymore, unfortunately, but they always ask if I can get them into games or whatever. So the answer is no, children. By the way, if you happen to be listening to this or watching this, that's not the case. Sorry, I can't get you in for free.
I got a quick question for you. Who was your favorite interview?
Oh, that's a really good question. Oh, dang. Never been asked that before. You know what? And this is not just because it's a recency thing, but it's Logan Stankoven. That's just what got me onto him and how great of a guy he is. He was just more than willing to come and hang out with me for half an hour on my lowly little stars podcast back in the day, back in 2022, before he was really well known across the NHL. And I mean, people knew who he was, but he hadn't even debuted in the AHL yet. So he was still the little Kamloops guy from British Columbia, close to Vancouver. So he's got to be my favorite. He's the best interview that I've ever done. I enjoyed talking to him all those years ago.
So Vince is a huge Chicago Blackhawks fan, so he wants to know how good will the Hawks be next year.
I like the ... between the B and then next year. That was funny. You know, I really don't think it matters all much how good they will be, just as long as Connor Bedard is getting better. And that's the thing about this year that's really bad. Is they were not very good this year, and they should not have been as bad as they were. So and obviously they fired their coach and everything like that, but they'll probably be playing meaningful games in January would be my guess, but come around February, March next year, I think they're just gonna. I don't think they're gonna be at the very bottom of the standings. I will say that for sure. But especially with Spencer Knight, I think that's gonna help. They'll be kind of in that mere pack in the lower half of the Western Conference. You know, probably 10, 11, 12 is kind of where I would put them for next year. So, I mean, they're only going to get better. They've got some really good prospects in Korchinski. They've got, obviously, they've got Bedard and some other guys up there, too. So, I mean, it can only get better from here, right, for the Blackhawks? That's my thought process.
He says that's better than this year. Useless by October.
Yeah, and I feel bad for him. I feel bad for him just because it is one of the league's most premier franchises too. So it's hard to see that.
No, but yeah. So Ryan, since we got a little bit of time left, why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast and like, are you on every day or do you have certain days that you go live?
So we do what we call an AGR after every single game. It's an after game review, and they vary in time. Normally it's around 20 to 40-ish minutes. If it's a really bad game and we don't want to talk about it, we'll talk for 20 minutes and call it good. And if it's like a really fantastic game, like for example, we had a couple of really good games against Vegas fairly recently. I think it was like a month ago. And I think we hit like 45 minutes with that one just because there was just so much to talk about. So we do an AGR after every single game, and then we do a 1 hour weekly Wednesday night podcast, and that we normally go live around 9:30 to about 10:30 Central Time. So it's like clockwork. We've been doing it for a while, and sometimes it's great, and we only have to do like 1 or 2 episodes a week. And then we have weeks like this week where you have a game Tuesday, we do our thing on Wednesday, another game Thursday, and we shouldn't have been planning to do one tonight, but we kind of have to. Everything that's happened today. So after I'm done with you here, probably around 9 o'clock, I'm going to get on with my brothers, and we're going to discuss all the stuff that happened with the Stars today. So 4 days in a row is a rarity. for us. But we have so much fun doing it. And it's a blast.
And that's all what it's all about, is having fun. As long as you're having fun doing it, that's the main thing.
Absolutely.
So as is a custom on the show, I don't know if you've watched it, but the guests close out the show as they would be closing out their own podcast.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
I wasn't ready.
We're going to let you close out the show as you would be closing out your own podcast.
Okay. I'll do my best. Thank you guys so much for those of you who have been listening live. There's even more of you who've been listening later. We appreciate you guys, as always, for doing so. Anywhere you're listening to your podcast, leave us a 5-star review wherever that may be. Or if you're on YouTube, click like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Starcastic Remarks. And StarcasticRemarks.com is the website. StarcasticRemarksShop.com is the merch store. And as always, we will catch you guys on the flip side. Alongside Dan, my name is Ryan. We'll catch you guys on the flip side. Hope you all have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you guys are listening. GG boys.
Thanks, guys, for coming. And we have an extra show on tomorrow night, so check us out as well tomorrow night. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate you. And Ryan, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming. It was a great time tonight.
Of course. Yeah, anytime. Thank you so much for having me on.
And hopefully, like you said, we can have you on again next time. Maybe when the Stars are in the playoffs, or maybe after they won the Stanley Cup. Who knows?
Yeah, well, let's do that one. I like that one better. Let's plan for that one first.
All right. Thanks, guys, for coming. Appreciate you. Thank you, Ryan, again. And everyone, have a great night, and see you next Friday.
Thank you, chat.